The sound of gravel crunching beneath tires fast, like something had just come barreling down the road, woke me up from my peaceful morning. I didn't even have time to steady my coffee cup before I saw it. There she was, Karen in her bright red ATV flying through the air. She'd hit the new wooden wall I had built right across the trail. Her ATV launched, she went over the handlebars, and there she was flat on her back in a puff of dirt. Her plastic sun visor flew off in one direction and her phone in another. And from the dirt she starts screeching like a banshee. "You tried to kill me!" she yelled, arms flailing, while her dog, some yappy little thing, barked from the passenger crate. "I didn't say a word," I said, sipping my coffee slowly. I just pointed to the sign on the wall, "Private property, no access." That wall, that sign, it wasn't just some decoration. It was the third time she'd trespassed this week. The audacity of it. The wall wasn't just about stopping her ATV from using the trail anymore. It was personal. This was war. See, Karen had been using the path behind my property as her personal ATV freeway ever since I moved in 6 months ago. At first I thought maybe it was just a one-time thing, maybe she was just cutting through once in a while. But nope. It turned into a daily thing. Every morning, as soon as the sun was barely up, I'd hear her engine roar ripping through the back acreage like she was prepping for a motocross competition. I tried to ignore it. Figured it was no big deal. But then one day I couldn't take it anymore. I walked outside to confront her, and she just waved like everything was fine, like we were neighbors in a sitcom, and kept right on driving. No apology, no asking for permission. Just assumed the trail was hers. When I finally stopped her and told her it was private property, she just laughed. "Oh, please," she said. "Everyone uses this path. It's basically public." But I checked the deed. No easements. No shared right-of-way. That trail was 100% mine. Still, she kept coming. I put up no trespassing signs, and she said the wind must have blown them down. I added reflectors, and she called them an eyesore, threatened to report me to the HOA. That's when I realized Karen wasn't just a neighbor. She was self-declared HOA enforcement. She wasn't officially anything. No title, no position, but she acted like she ran the place. She made her own badge and wielded it like she was some suburban sheriff. She started sending passive-aggressive notices about anything she could, like my tools being visible near the barn or my mailbox being half an inch too short. It was all intimidation, all because I wouldn't let her use the trail. That's when I decided enough was enough. I spent the weekend building a solid wooden wall across the trail, complete with concrete anchors and cedar beams. This wasn't just for show. I wanted something sturdy enough to stop Karen. I also set up 2 game cameras, one high, one low, just in case she tried to argue about it. And just to make my point clear, I painted a wooden sign into the road for Shortcut Queens. The morning she crashed into that wall was the first moment of peace I'd had in a week. But of course, peace didn't last. She limped over to my porch, banging on the door with one high-heeled gardening clog, screaming about lawsuits and medical emergencies. "You can't build a death trap in the middle of a trail," she shrieked. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer." I calmly reminded her the trail was mine and she was trespassing. That only made her angrier. She threatened to call the police, so I told her to go ahead. Then I pulled out the camera footage, clear as day, showing her trespassing multiple times, ignoring all the signs. Her face turned the same color as her ATV. She muttered something about HOA bylaws and stormed off, dragging her busted ATV behind her with her dog nipping at her heels. I figured that was the end of it, but of course I was wrong. That night I noticed motion lights flickering by the wall. I walked out and saw her in her backyard, binoculars in hand, scribbling in a notepad while holding her phone. She was documenting everything like she was building a legal case. The next day I found a letter slipped under my door. It was an official-looking HOA notice claiming I had created an unauthorized barrier that violated community standards. Signed by Enforcement Liaison Karen. No last name, just Karen. I drove straight to the county office the next morning to confirm my land wasn't under HOA jurisdiction. In fact, it had been exempt for years because it used to be an agricultural lot. The clerk even gave me a stamped copy of the original waiver. I smiled all the way home. Karen had no legal standing, but that didn't stop her. She came back that evening with backup 2 of her HOA friends. They started taking pictures like it was a crime scene. One of them even brought a measuring tape. I leaned on my porch watching them whisper like they were plotting something. Then they left, and I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd accepted defeat. But no. I reviewed the game footage that night and I saw something that made me stop. One of Karen's friends had looked up at the camera, then pulled a can of spray paint from her bag. I knew right then that the war wasn't over. They were planning something. 2 days later, whispers started in the neighborhood. People walking their dogs slowed down near my property. Some nodded in approval. Others looked away, torn between Karen's HOA and what was actually right. And then the flyers started showing up. Emergency HOA. Meeting in bold red letters. The topic was vague, something about community safety and obstructive structures, but I knew exactly what it was about. She was coming for my wall. She was coming for me. I wasn't technically part of the HOA anymore, but my property was close enough so I had the right to attend. I showed up 5 minutes early, sat in the back with a bottle of water and a GoPro hidden in my shirt pocket. The room was packed with neighbors sipping lemonade and pretending it wasn't just a poorly veiled witch hunt. Karen stood at the front, arms crossed, tapping her notes, looking all official with her pearl necklace and pastel cardigan. The moment the meeting started, Karen launched into her so-called presentation. She held up a photo of her overturned ATV next to my wall and started talking about how dangerous the unapproved barrier was. She even tried to call it a historic community access route. She twisted the story, implying that dozens of neighbors used it daily for recreation. But not a single person in that room nodded in agreement. Then she started waving a stack of fake violation slips like they were court subpoenas. She announced, I had been fined $12,000 for multiple violations, visual obstructions, safety hazards, unauthorized structures. The room was stunned by her audacity. When she finally opened the floor for discussion, I stood up slowly, thanked her for the entertaining slideshow, and pulled out the stamped exemption papers from the county. I handed copies to everyone in the front row. Karen tried to interrupt, but I held up my hand and kept talking. I told the room about the cameras, the signs, the harassment, and most importantly, how she had no legal right to claim the trail. Karen's face went pale. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. And then she tried to shift the conversation, saying I wasn't technically under the HOA's jurisdiction, but I should respect the norms of the community. That's when I dropped the bomb. I told them I had legal representation, and if any more false notices showed up, my lawyer would be bringing the county officials in for harassment. Karen's face was priceless. The next day, I found my wall tagged with bright pink spray paint. Land thief sprawled across the boards in childish cursive. I knew it was Karen's daughter. I had the footage to prove it. But instead of going straight to the police, I called my cousin Alan, a civil rights attorney who specialized in property law. He showed up the next day laughing as soon as he saw the footage. He was all in. We went to the next HOA meeting. Karen was there, still making trouble, scolding neighbors about wind chimes. Alan waited for a lull, then stepped forward, introduced himself, and handed her a cease and desist letter. It didn't take long. The entire room was silent as Alan read aloud the exact section of the state code that made her fake fines invalid. The silence was deafening. And when he handed over the footage of her daughter vandalizing the wall, Karen knew it was over. Karen disappeared from the neighborhood. Her house grew quiet, and for the first time it felt like peace had returned. The wall, that stupid wall, became a symbol of standing your ground, a reminder that power, especially the kind that's built on lies and fear, doesn't last. And you know that wall wasn't just wood and nails, it was principle. It was about boundaries, real, legal, and moral. It wasn't just about stopping Karen, it was about showing everyone that there's a line you don't cross. And when people pass by now, I hear them muttering, "Good for him." And you know what? That's more than enough.